When the son of Kunti is present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Text 29. Vepatuscha sharire me romaharshascha jayate gandivam samsate hastat tvakchaiva paridhayate. Translation. My whole body is trembling and my hair is standing on end. My bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. Text 30. Nacha shoksnamivastatum brahmativa cha me manaha nimittani cha pashyami viparithani keshava. Translation. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. Text 31. Nacha shreyo nupashyami hutva svajanam ahave nakankshe vijayam Krishna nacha rajam sukanicha. Translation. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So, we'll read 32 through 35. Kim no rajena govinda kim bhoger jivitena va yesham arte kankshitang no rajam bhoga sukanicha ta ime vastita yudhe pranang styaktva dhanani cha acharya pitara putras tathaiva cha pitamaha Matula swashura partra shyala sambandinastata etannahantumichchami kudnatopi madhusudana api trailokya rajyasya heto kim nu mahi krite nahatya natarastrana ka priti syajjanarjana. Translation. O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself, when all those whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the 3 worlds, let alone this earth. So, we'll go back to text number 34. I mean, 24, sorry. Page 52. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharat, being thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. Purport. By His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this verse, Arjuna is referred to as Gudakesha. Gudaka means sleep, and one who conquers sleep is called Gudakesh. Sleep also means ignorance. So Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment, because that is the nature of a devotee. Either in waking or in sleep, a devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastimes. Thus, a devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. This is called Krishna consciousness or samadhi. As Hrishikesh, or the director of the senses and mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand Arjuna's purpose in placing the chariot in the midst of the armies. Thus he did so and spoke as follows. So here, Arjuna's address as Gudikesha, which Prabhupada mentions that this is because he's conquered sleep and ignorance. So there's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita which explains that wherever there is the sun, there cannot be darkness. Similarly, wherever there is Krishna, there cannot be Maya. So where there is Krishna, Maya is not there. So one has to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness and samadhi, and Maya will never enter, because there will always be the sun there, and therefore no darkness. So how do we think of Krishna always? Well, it is a practice of devotional service. There's so many processes of devotional service that we do to absorb our mind in thinking of Krishna. You know, the main particular way is we chant Hare Krishna, which Lord Chaitanya has given us as the chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So by always chanting the Maha Mantra, then the mind is forced to think of Krishna, because these are Krishna's holy names. So the next verse, text 25. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, Hrishikesh, the Lord said, "Just behold, Partha, all the Kurus who are assembled here." Purport. As a supersoul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna. The use of the word Hrishikesh in this connection indicates that he knew everything. And the word Partha, or the son of Kunti, or Pritha, is also similarly significant in reference to Arjuna. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjuna that because Arjuna was the son of Pritha, the sister of his own father, Vasudeva, he had agreed to be the charioteer of Arjuna. Now, what did Krishna mean when he told Arjuna to behold the Kurus? Did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his aunt Pritha. The mind of Arjuna was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking. That's an interesting thing, is that they're calling each other like different names based on, some subtle points. And you see this also in the pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam with like Krishna and his devotees. They have like call each other different names at certain times, but it has like a certain meaning behind it, or like implication.
Yeah.
So like here we also see in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is addressing Arjuna, you could see the different names in which he addresses them, and then that has a symbolic meaning behind it based on some implication Krishna is making. Like here, he's explaining that you come from a great family, Partha, which is a royal family.
Partha means son of Pritha. Pritha is another name for Kunti. And Kunti was raised by Queen Kunti Bhoja. That's how she got there. Kunti. So it's actually Vasudeva is brother of Kunti. So see how close they are. Krishna is the son of Vasudeva. And he's the brother of Kunti, who's the mother of Arjuna. Actually, they're cousins. Very close.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any comments or questions about these verses here? Yes, Magadari Prabhu.
Could you explain why Prabhupada says, or what it means when Prabhupada says the mind of Arjuna was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking? I don't understand.
Someone look up the word predicate. It's a difficult thing to figure this out.
Grammar, logic. State, affirm, or assert something about the subject of a sentence or an argument of a proposition. Quote, a word that predicates something about its subject. 2. Found or base something on.
That's all?
It says to proclaim, declare, affirm, or assert. To connote or imply. To make an affirmation or assertion.
He understood the factual matter. Here I have, if an idea and an argument is predicated on something, it depends on the existence or truth of this thing. This quote unquote, the sales forecast is predicated on the assumption that the economy will grow by 4%.
Based on. Basically means based on. So read now. Read Prabhupada's sentence with the word predicated meaning that. So what does it read again?
The mind of Arjuna was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking.
That is, the mind was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking. So then he goes into, this is like beforehand, and then he goes into what the mind was predicated, Arjuna's mind, he predicated.
Yeah, that's what I understood it to mean. Because it said in the previous verse that what's it called? Rishikesha. So he what was it? Shishigornitai ki jai. Prabhupada says in the previous verse that as Rishikesha, the director of the senses and mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand Arjuna's purpose in placing the chariot in the midst of the armies. It's like, why does he need to go check out the soldiers? He knows who's going to fight there. It's an act of hesitation, And so he's like kind of playing, he's like kind of not toying with Arjuna, but he's he knows why Arjuna is, wanting to do this. So then he says, just behold, the Kurus. And so it's kind of like a friendly, like joking gesture, but he already understands that he's having some hesitation, or he's going to. So that's been my understanding of this point. Someone had a point?
You don't need the microphone.
All right, I'll go on to the next verse. There Arjuna, this is verse 26. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers all present there. Purport. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bhrishava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers, Bhishma and Somadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Shalya and Shakuni, brothers like Dhirodhana, sons like Lakshmana, friends like Ashvatthama, well-wishers like Kritavarma, etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. Text 27. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. 28. Arjuna said, My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Purport. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them, who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still, one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but that he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana saver gunais tatra samasate suraha harabha bhaktasya One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are... Can you get his mic from... But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Wow. It's really interesting that Arjuna is basically the greatest warrior of this time. One of them, there's many great warriors, but he's more or less the topmost warrior, and he's shivering in fright. His limbs are quivering, his mouth is drying up, and this isn't such a really like a characteristic of a kshatriya. A kshatriya is completely powerful, courageous, bold, prideful. So they're ready to fight, and doesn't matter, But Arjuna is a pure devotee of the Lord, so he has this quality of a devotee, and he sees so many people that are fighting unnecessarily, right? These Kurus were just unnecessarily performing aggressive acts to them, just because Duryodhana was evil-minded and Dhritarashtra was attached to Duryodhana. So they tried to kill the Pandavas in various ways, strip them from their land, just so many unreasonable things which they did, and it's just so unnecessary. And now, because of their aggression, unnecessary aggression, now he has to fight his grandfather Bhishma and his guru Dronacharya and his friends and other relatives like this that were mentioned, who were close to him. He has to fight all such persons, even though it's so inconceivable that like this would be happening for him, and so unnecessary, just by somebody usurping the throne and then trying to get rid of the real heirs to the throne, which is Maharaj Yudhisthira. So this is the predicament in the material world, is that people are materially motivated, and there's this desire for power to be the controller, and so men become greedy with power and do all sorts of unspeakable acts, even to loved ones. So Arjuna doesn't want to fight such persons, and so he's completely overwhelmed and disturbed about it. Ultimately, though, Krishna mentions that this is my plan. So I wanted this to happen, and Arjuna takes shelter of that and performs his duty in Krishna consciousness. So yeah, it's interesting. One devotee mentioned too, he's been translating the Mahabharata for many years and is writing a novel on it. But he was saying that an interesting quality of the Pandavas is that they were born in the forest with sages. So they grew up in a very they had a very peaceful upbringing and associated with these sages in the forest. And then when Maharaj Pandu died, then they were forced to go to the Hastinapur, big royal city. The first time they're seeing, big city, elephants, and all these things. And then, like, the first thing that is said to them when they get there is that somebody's, be careful. There's certain people here that want to kill you. And just think of that when you're super young. Your father just died, and now you're going to visit your relatives, who the uncle is supposed to be as equal as the father to their nephews. And now so many atrocities happen just because they're the real heir to the throne. But Dhritarashtra wants his sons to rule because he was born blind, but he was the elder son. He was supposed to, technically, according to custom, he's supposed to rule, but because he was blind, then he was disqualified. So, anyway, yeah, it's an interesting, historical analysis of the characters to understand about them. So this verse, 5:18-12, which Maharaj nicely quoted, and Prabhupada quotes here too, it's a nice verse to meditate on, and we can understand this to be true when we are interacting with materialistic people, is that they may have good qualities. Obviously they may be charitable, or they may be very kind, compassionate, generous. But because they're hovering on the material plane, it's actually not sustainable. And at any moment, they can be attracted by the glaring material energy and become allured into bad qualities, performing behaviors which is arising from some greed that arises, or some lust or envy. And I know that if I reflect on my own life before Krishna consciousness, I prided myself on trying to be a good person. And I felt like I had good intentions with things, but because of attraction to lust and greed, then I found myself in situations where I was actually causing suffering to people, even though I still was thinking I'm a good person, like I want to be a good person. But I find myself in these circumstances where I'm actually like disturbing people and causing suffering and exploiting. And so that is the predicament of someone just on the mental plane. There may be good qualities there may be good intentions, but because they're hovering on the material plane, they're attracted to, or they're influenced by their these six vices of our conditioned nature. Then they're causing suffering, they're exploiting people. Whereas those who have unflinching devotion to the Supreme Lord, to the personality of Godhead, they have all the good qualities of demigods. Now I looked up this word because I was always a little confused about this word, sura, demigods. Because when I think of demigods, I think of 33 million demigods. But then I think of like times where they do become influenced by the modes of nature. Like sometimes certain demigods steal a wife of another demigod, or there was even Brahaspati's wife had an affair with the moon god, and like this. So there's also this intrigue amongst them. So I've always had this doubt about this point. Now when I've researched this word sura, there's two ways in which Prabhupada defines demigods, or the sura is either the godly, saintly personalities, one who has godly qualities, and he also uses demigods too. So demigods can also refer to godly persons, like in there's various translation of this verse, and sometimes it mentions godly persons. So in this particular verse, when I read this one translation of it, it made more sense to me that one who has unflinching devotion to the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the godly persons, the saintly personalities. But those who, mahad guna, where are those qualities, good qualities of those persons that are hovering on the mental plane? It's just a teeter-tottering platform, this mental plane. You could see this if I'm going to be visiting my hometown pretty soon. And every time I go there, it's very apparent, how the mental plane works with people. Because one moment everything's fine, and then the next somebody's mad at someone, there's some drama, and you're just like, whoa, it's just a headache, People that are completely just on the mental plane, unfortunately. So, are there any comments or questions about the Aspak Jai Keshava? Dr. Jai.
You want to hear me?
Class Prabhu. I just have a question on what you just said. What's the difference between
like disputes or these quarrels among devotees. There's like these quarrels among people in realistic life. Because we see these things happening around us, even in our little community. It can happen, but what's the difference? Yeah, well, there's like, I guess you could say there's levels of devotees, right? So very much, or maybe aren't so advanced. You know, they still might be, well, they still are conditioned by envy or anger or whatever. So that might arise, and then some dispute occurs because of one's conditioned nature. So that dispute is, you know, it's obviously not favorable for devotional service. But because such people are devotees of the Lord, at least trying to become devotees, it is different because, of course, hopefully it's not offensive, but it's different because, you know, if they're sincere, then they'll move past it. You know, they'll work at it, they'll reflect on it, they'll apologize, you know, and then they learn some valuable lesson. You know, they offered obeisances to each other. If there was offenses, then they're forgiven, you know, so then they're making progress still, you know, because if one is very much conditioned in these ways, like getting angry easily and then lashing out, you know, then we have to expect that it's, you know, not just going to go away rapid, you know, right away, although it could, but there might be some stumbling blocks in that category, you know. So if one is sincere, trying to sincerely practice, then there's always going to be progress to be made, you know. Whereas materialistic persons, they're just disputing over everything, you know. They're just quarreling. That's a characteristic of the age of Kali, is to just have so much quarrel going on, and we see quarrel happening over just little things. So materialistic persons, that is, you know, they're always disputing, but there's actually no spiritual benefit, you know.
A comment?
Yes, Maharaj?
Thank you. Regarding the other topic we were just on a minute ago about that verse, the qualities of the demigods. In one place, Prabhupada says, get the qualities of Krishna. So I think that's indicative of what the real meaning is. Demigod means, as you said, godly. So it gets the godly qualities. Qualities of Krishna come to those who serve him. They acquire his qualities. Nobody else gets his qualities unless they serve him. It's close. That's one point. About this particular point now, we're talking about quarreling. Yeah, you nicely pointed out that we may get into quarrels because of our false ego still. So many conditionings we still have. But the unique thing about quarrels between devotees is they're quarreling, not so much, they're not out of false ego, they're not trying to get more sense gratification. If that's there, that's conditioning. We can also assume they're trying to please Krishna. So one may disagree. One may think, I think Krishna should get a red dress today. And other things, I think they should wear the purple dress. So that kind of a quarrel between devotees. How to serve Krishna better. That's not considered detrimental. Thank you.
I recall when Prithu Maharaj is performing sacrifices and is about to beat Indra, or at least tie Indra in the quantity. and Indra steals the horse, and there's a quarrel there. And it's described in the purport. Prabhupada saying that this is, they make up, because Krishna's at the center. Without Krishna at the center, there's no, without trying to please Krishna, there's just my opinion about it or your opinion, and my sense of ethics and yours, not to mention all the bad qualities. But trying to please Krishna, things are resolved quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, I've seen, I've witnessed like a quarrel amongst senior devotees, and before, and yeah, the whole quality of it is completely different than like a quarrel that I've, or some argument with persons that are materialistic, because usually they take it very personal, materialistic people, and then they harbor all this personal envy or hatred towards such people. But for devotees, at least these advanced devotees that I've observed, you could just tell there was no like personal envy towards the person. They were just like, they were addressing the difference and just arguing against whatever differences they had. But you could still feel the love, reciprocation, and respect, and then the mutual respect that, okay, let's agree that we disagree, and they still treated each other fine afterwards. There was not like some weird envy or anger or whatever. So at least that's like the ideal dealing, if there's some quarrel amongst devotees, is that there's not any envy that's harbored or hatred or anything towards a person. Just respect that there's difference of opinion. So if we cultivate that quality, then that's how we can cooperate and have a worldwide society. Because obviously there are going to be differences of opinion on things. We're all individual. In the spiritual world, there's differences of opinions on things. But somehow or other we have to learn how to cooperate. It's very difficult. It can be. But by practicing Krishna consciousness and learning Vaishnava etiquette, then we have like a roadmap, or we have a guidebook how to navigate through these challenges of differences, unity and diversity, trying to find that. And yeah, the unity principle is Krishna. So Krishna will give us the intelligence also how to react, how to act, how, when to apologize if we went a little bit too far, or like that. You have something, Prabhu? I mean, I know that if I say something which is like could have been offensive, then if I'm trying to chant, like I'm just thinking about that the whole time, and then I realize, okay, I gotta do something about this. Krishna is telling me that you should work on this.
I have a question about compassion. It seems here that Arjuna is seemingly been put under some bodily identification. And I'm wondering what place in devotional service does compassion for the body, exist? And should we feel compassionate for others' bodily welfare, things like that?
Yes. Yes, we should feel compassion for every living entity. But if Krishna wants us to do so, to carry out some particular activity, that by carrying out that activity, there may be some injury to others. Don't think that Krishna is not aware of it. Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight. he knows what happens when the arrows are shot. He's not foolish. Krishna knows exactly what's going to happen. But he wanted it. So then Arjuna's compassion was out of place because it was against what Krishna wanted. Thank you.
Did you get that? I didn't get it. I didn't get all of it.
The devotees are asking me to give a summary. It was hard to hear everything. So that we should feel compassion for every living entity. And we shouldn't think that Krishna doesn't understand what, like the implications of some action, like shooting the arrows. He knows what will happen. But the compassion that Arjuna felt was out of place because it was contrary to the desire of Krishna.
On this point of making offenses, so if we are chanting improperly, will our conscience kind of like take a back seat, and we won't feel like we'll feel like we were right, and we won't want to apologize for some offenses that we could have made. Does that happen when we don't chant properly, or is it just a part of being a conditioned soul? Thank you.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I chant improperly, and during the day, I'll think like, I'll do something, and it'll irritate or agitate a devotee, and I'll feel like later on, like when you just said that right now, like how you feel bad while you're chanting. You know, I feel like if I'm not chanting properly, that I won't feel bad if I make offenses if I'm not chanting properly. But or is that it, or is it just part of being a conditioned soul? You know, we don't feel bad when we So.
No, for some reason I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Jai.
Let's go on chanting. And it's nice to always feel that I could have done something better. And if I was rude or impertinent, then I'll try to rectify that. Like KB was saying, we try to rectify things in our minds, in our own selves. We may not have intended any offense. And if it's not serious, then these things are taken care of every morning. When we say, Ancha kalpa trubhyascha, vipasana devyacha, Chitana, Bhavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namaha. Offering our praises, all the Vaishnavas, please forgive me for any inadvertent offenses. Now, if it's something very serious, like Durvasa was trying to kill Ambarish Maharaj, that's serious. That requires some serious rectification and activity. Thank you.
Jai, thank you, Guru Maharaj. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada.